Most people who dream about starting a small farm imagine the same thing first. A few chickens in the backyard, fresh eggs every morning, a simple little coop, maybe even a small side income selling extra eggs to neighbors. It sounds easy. It sounds safe. And for years, chickens have been treated like the default answer for beginners entering the world of profitable farming. But something unusual has been happening behind the scenes. Quietly, and almost completely unnoticed by the average person, a growing number of small farmers are starting to move away from traditional backyard chicken setups. Not because chickens stopped working, but because another bird is slowly proving to be faster, cheaper, easier to automate, and in some cases, dramatically more efficient for a small farm income. Quail, tiny birds that many people barely think about, are becoming one of the most interesting opportunities in modern small-scale farming. While most people are still building expensive chicken coops and dealing with rising feed costs, some farmers are stacking automated quail systems inside garages, sheds, greenhouses, and compact backyard setups that require surprisingly little space or labor. And the craziest part is that many people still have no idea how profitable these systems can become when they're designed correctly. Because this is not just about raising birds anymore. This is about automation. This is about efficiency. And this is about a new generation of profitable livestock systems built for people who do not own huge farms, massive acres of land, or expensive agricultural equipment. For years, one of the biggest problems with farming has been scale. Traditional livestock operations usually demand more land, more feed, more cleaning, more labor, and more money. The moment beginners start calculating costs, many quickly realize why farming can become overwhelming so fast. Chicken feed keeps rising. Space disappears quickly. Cleaning becomes exhausting. Disease spreads easily. And many small farmers discover that their simple farm startup suddenly turns into a daily job that consumes far more time and money than expected. That is where quail farming starts changing the conversation completely. Because unlike chickens, quail were almost built for modern micro-farming systems. They mature quickly. They reproduce quickly. They require very little room. They stay relatively quiet. And when automated properly, they can become one of the lowest maintenance livestock systems available to small landowners. This is exactly why more homesteaders, backyard farmers, and farming side hustle enthusiasts are starting to pay attention, especially now, because the world is changing in ways that make efficient farming more valuable than ever before. Feed costs continue rising. Urban farming is growing. Backyard farming is exploding online, and more people are searching for profitable small farm ideas that can realistically fit into modern life. Most people simply do not have 10 acres of land sitting behind their house. They do not have giant barns. They do not have thousands of dollars to invest into large-scale livestock operations. But they might have a garage. They might have a small backyard. They might have a storage building. And suddenly, automated quail systems start looking incredibly attractive, especially when the numbers begin adding up. Because one of the biggest misconceptions about profitable farming is that bigger always means better. But in reality, efficiency matters far more than size. A small system that runs efficiently can outperform a larger system, drowning in labor, waste, and overhead costs. And this is exactly where quail separate themselves from many traditional farm animals. A single chicken may require several square feet of space to stay comfortable and productive. Multiply that by dozens of birds, and suddenly your backyard starts disappearing fast. Quail are different. Because of their small size, farmers can raise large numbers in carefully designed stacked cage systems that use vertical space instead of horizontal space. In other words, instead of spreading outward, quail farming often scales upward. That single difference changes everything. Some small farmers are managing hundreds of quail in the same amount of space that would normally hold only a small flock of chickens. And because automated watering systems, feeding systems, and waste collection systems can be added relatively easily, the daily workload becomes dramatically smaller than most people expect. That is the part many beginners find hard to believe at first. When people imagine livestock farming, they usually imagine hard physical labor, heavy buckets, constant cleaning, endless feeding routines, hours of maintenance every day. But automated quail systems can look completely different. Imagine rows of neatly stacked cages, automatic nipple drinkers delivering clean water continuously, feeders designed to reduce waste, egg trays rolling fresh eggs forward automatically, lighting systems operating on timers, waste collection systems simplifying cleanup. Suddenly, the entire setup starts looking less like traditional farming and more like a highly organized production system. And that level of efficiency matters, because labor is one of the hidden killers of small farm profit. Many beginners focus only on startup costs. They calculate how much the birds cost. They estimate feed prices. They budget for cages and equipment. But they forget to calculate time. Time cleaning. Time feeding. Time collecting eggs. Time replacing water. Time handling waste. Over time, those small daily tasks become exhausting. And this is exactly why many people eventually quit farming projects they originally felt excited about. But automation changes the equation. The less time a system demands every day, the easier it becomes to scale without burnout. This is why quail farming is attracting attention not just from traditional homesteaders, but from younger entrepreneurs, side hustlers, and people searching for alternative income streams. Because many modern farmers are no longer chasing the old image of farming. They are chasing freedom, flexibility, efficiency, and systems that fit into real modern lifestyles. That is also why quail farming fits so perfectly into the rising homestead business movement happening online right now. More people want self-sufficiency. More people want local food production. More people want small farm income opportunities. But they want systems that are realistic. They want livestock that can fit into small properties without overwhelming their lives completely. And quail happen to solve several major problems all at once. They are small, fast-growing, relatively quiet, efficient eaters, and capable of producing eggs at an impressive rate considering their size. That last part surprises many people, because quail eggs may be tiny, but production can become extremely powerful when scaled properly. A healthy female quail can lay hundreds of eggs per year under good conditions. Multiply that across larger groups, and suddenly even compact setups begin producing significant output surprisingly quickly. And unlike many larger farm animals, quail reach maturity incredibly fast. This is one of the biggest reasons some small farmers become obsessed with them. Speed. Everything about quail farming moves faster than most people expect. Faster growth, faster reproduction, faster scaling, faster turnover. That speed allows small farm owners to adjust, expand, and experiment far more quickly than they could with many larger livestock systems. And in profitable farming, speed matters, especially for beginners, because long waiting periods destroy motivation. Many livestock systems require months or even years before meaningful returns begin appearing. But quail mature rapidly enough that beginners often start seeing production much sooner than expected. That creates momentum. And momentum keeps people engaged. But there's another reason automated quail systems are gaining traction right now. Noise. This may sound minor at first, but noise becomes a massive issue for many backyard farming projects. Chickens can become loud very quickly, especially roosters. Neighbors complain. Restrictions appear. Urban farming becomes harder. Quail are different. Their quieter nature makes them far more compatible with small residential environments. This allows many people to start micro-farming systems in places where traditional poultry farming would create constant problems. That flexibility opens doors. Suddenly, profitable livestock farming is no longer limited only to rural landowners. And that changes the future of homestead income completely. Because as food prices rise and more people search for farming side hustles, systems that maximize efficiency while minimizing space and labor become incredibly attractive, especially to beginners, especially to younger audiences, and especially to people who want realistic farm startup ideas without risking enormous amounts of money. But despite all these advantages, quail farming is still surrounded by misconceptions. Some people assume the birds are too delicate. Others assume the market is too small. And many still underestimate how profitable small farm systems can become when they are built around efficiency instead of size. That is why the next part becomes so important. Because automation alone does not create profit. The real difference appears when farmers understand how to combine production, scaling, and market demand into a system that actually generates consistent income. And once the numbers start coming together, the entire picture starts looking very different from traditional backyard farming. The moment most people hear the phrase small farm income, they usually imagine tiny profits, a few dollars from eggs, a little extra cash from local sales, maybe enough money to cover feed costs if everything goes well. But this is where many people completely misunderstand how profitable livestock systems actually work. Because the real power is not in a single bird. It is in multiplication. And quail happen to multiply faster than most beginners expect. This is exactly where automated quail farming starts becoming incredibly interesting from a business perspective. A single quail does not look impressive. A tiny bird producing tiny eggs does not immediately scream serious income opportunity. But once production scales, the numbers begin stacking rapidly. And that is when many small farmers suddenly realize they may have underestimated these birds completely. Imagine a compact automated setup with multiple stack cages operating efficiently inside a small shed or garage. Instead of caring for 10 or 15 large birds spread across a backyard, the farmer manages a much larger number of quail using vertical systems designed for maximum efficiency. Water flows automatically. Feed stays organized. Egg collection becomes simple. Daily labor drops dramatically. And because quail mature so quickly, production begins accelerating far faster than many traditional farm animals. This is one of the biggest advantages in modern profitable farming. Efficiency per square foot. Many beginners still focus only on land size when thinking about farming. But some of the most successful micro-farming systems in the world are built around maximizing production within limited space. That is exactly why quail farming fits so perfectly into the future of small-scale farming. A compact system can produce surprising output without requiring giant pastures or expensive infrastructure. And in a world where land prices continue rising, that matters more every year, especially for younger people trying to enter farming. Because one of the biggest barriers preventing new farmers from starting is simple math. Land is expensive. Buildings are expensive. Equipment is expensive. And large livestock operations can become financially overwhelming almost immediately. But quail offers something different. A lower barrier to entry. That changes everything. For many people, quail become the first profitable small farm idea that actually feels realistic instead of impossible. And that emotional shift matters. Because once people believe they can realistically start, they begin taking action. This is why quail farming videos are exploding across the internet right now. People are fascinated by the idea that small automated systems can create legitimate homestead income opportunities without requiring huge farms. And once the profit breakdown starts appearing, curiosity turns into obsession very quickly. Because the income potential in quail farming rarely comes from only one direction. That is another major advantage. There are multiple income streams. Egg production, meat production, hatching eggs, breeding stock, live birds, processed products, even manure for gardening systems. This diversification creates flexibility that many beginners overlook completely. For example, some small farmers focus heavily on quail eggs because demand continues growing among health-conscious consumers, restaurants, specialty food buyers, and local farm markets. Others focus on meat birds because quail mature quickly and require less feed than larger poultry species. Some specialize in breeding stock for other farmers entering the industry. Others combine everything together into one integrated system. And because quail reproduce rapidly, scaling can happen surprisingly fast under proper management. That speed creates momentum financially as well. Many traditional livestock systems move slowly, very slowly. But quail operate almost like biological production machines when conditions are optimized correctly. That is why automation becomes so powerful. Because once systems are streamlined, scaling no longer increases labor at the same rate. This is a dream many small farm owners chase. Higher production without dramatically increasing workload. And this is exactly where many chicken farmers begin feeling frustrated. Because larger chicken flocks often create more cleaning, more noise, more disease risk, and more daily management stress. Scaling becomes physically demanding quickly. Quail systems can feel entirely different, especially when vertical cage systems are designed properly. Imagine walking into a clean, organized room where hundreds of birds are producing consistently inside compact rows of cages. Water systems refill automatically. Eggs roll gently into collection trays. Lighting operates on schedules. Waste management stays controlled. Suddenly, farming starts looking less chaotic and more systematic. That level of organization matters psychologically too, because disorder burns people out. But efficient systems feel manageable, and manageable systems are easier to grow. This is one of the hidden reasons automated quail farming appeals so strongly to beginners searching for farming side hustles. It feels achievable. Not easy, but achievable. There's a huge difference, because realistic opportunities attract action far more effectively than fantasy promises. And despite the excitement surrounding profitable livestock, successful farmers understand something important. No farming business prints free money. Every system still requires discipline, consistency, management, and smart decisions. Quail are no exception. In fact, some of the biggest beginner mistakes happen because people underestimate how important proper setup becomes. Ventilation problems destroy production quickly. Poor temperature management can wipe out chicks overnight. Cheap feed lowers performance dramatically. Overcrowding increases stress and disease risk. Weak breeding practices damage long-term productivity. And one small mistake inside incubation systems can ruin entire batches of eggs before they ever hatch. That is why the best quail farmers treat their setups almost like controlled environments instead of random backyard cages. Details matter, especially in automated systems, because automation only works well when the underlying setup is designed correctly. This is why experienced farmers spend so much time optimizing simple things most beginners ignore. Airflow, lighting schedules, water quality, feed consistency, breeding ratios, cage spacing, temperature stability. At first glance, these details may seem small, but over time, tiny improvements compound into massive differences in production and profitability. That is how serious small farm profit systems are built, not through luck, through optimization. And quail happen to respond extremely well to efficient systems. That is one reason many modern homesteaders are starting to view quail farming less like traditional poultry farming and more like scalable micro farming. The systems are compact, repeatable, efficient, and highly adaptable. Some farmers build them in barns. Others use greenhouses. Some convert garages. Others transform storage buildings into compact production facilities. And because the birds themselves are so small, expansion becomes much easier than many people expect. That flexibility is one of the biggest reasons quail farming fits modern life better than many traditional livestock systems, especially for people balancing jobs, families, or side businesses, because time matters, and systems that save time become extremely valuable. This is one of the hidden reasons many people fail in farming, not because they lack passion, but because the workload eventually overwhelms them. Daily labor slowly becomes exhausting. Cleaning becomes repetitive, feeding becomes constant, and eventually the system starts controlling the farmer instead of helping them build freedom. Automation changes that relationship. When properly designed, automated quail systems reduce repetitive labor dramatically. This gives farmers more flexibility to scale production without sacrificing every hour of their day. That freedom becomes addictive, especially once income starts appearing. And that income potential becomes even more interesting when quail are compared against other profitable farm animals. Take rabbit farming, for example. Rabbits are another fast-reproducing livestock option popular among small-scale farming enthusiasts. They also require relatively little space compared to larger animals. But rabbits still involve significant cage cleaning, breeding management, and processing labor. Now compare that with automated quail systems operating with organized feed systems, water systems, and efficient egg collection. Suddenly quail begin looking far more scalable. Then there are Nigerian dwarf goats, another extremely popular homestead business animal. Goats can absolutely generate income through milk, breeding, and meat production, but they require fencing, grazing areas, medical management, parasite control, and far more physical space than quail. Again, the efficiency gap becomes obvious. This does not mean quail replace every livestock system. Far from it. But it does explain why so many modern farmers are becoming obsessed with compact, high-efficiency production models, especially during economic uncertainty, because smaller systems carry smaller risk. That matters psychologically too. People are far more willing to experiment with farming when the startup costs feel manageable. A massive livestock investment feels terrifying. A compact, automated quail system feels possible. And once beginners experience success, confidence grows quickly. That confidence often leads to expansion. More cages, better automation, improved breeding stock, larger production systems, new markets. And suddenly what started as a simple backyard farming experiment evolves into a serious homestead income stream. But perhaps the most important reason quail farming keeps growing is this. The market conditions are changing in its favor. Consumers are becoming more interested in local food systems. Restaurants constantly search for specialty products. Organic and farm-raised protein demand continues increasing. And more people are becoming curious about alternative livestock systems outside traditional industrial farming. That creates opportunity, especially for small farmers willing to move early, while many others still ignore the industry completely. Because in profitable farming, timing matters. The farmers who recognize efficient systems before everyone else often position themselves far ahead of the market. And right now, automated quail farming still feels like one of those hidden opportunities most people have barely noticed yet. But that may not stay true for very long. One of the most fascinating things about modern farming is that the industry no longer looks the way most people imagine it. For decades, farming was associated with massive land ownership, expensive machinery, endless labor, and physically exhausting routines that consumed entire days from sunrise to sunset. The idea of building profitable farming systems on small pieces of land seemed unrealistic to many people. But technology, automation, and changing consumer demand are quietly rewriting the rules. And automated quail farming sits directly in the middle of that shift, because what makes quail so powerful is not just the birds themselves. It is what they represent: efficiency, adaptability, and the possibility of building meaningful small farm income without needing a giant traditional farm. That is exactly why quail farming fits perfectly into the growing homesteading for profit movement happening right now. People want practical systems. They want realistic farm business ideas. They want livestock that fit modern life instead of completely taking over it. And perhaps most importantly, they want systems that can scale gradually without requiring overwhelming risk. This is where quail become incredibly attractive for beginners, because unlike many livestock systems, quail allow people to start small while still leaving room for serious expansion later. A person can begin with a simple compact setup, learn breeding, learn incubation, understand feed management, study production patterns, improve automation, then scale slowly over time as confidence and experience grow. That flexibility is one of the hidden strengths of profitable small farm systems, the ability to grow gradually instead of gambling everything immediately. And in today's economy, that matters more than ever, because people are becoming increasingly cautious about large financial risks. They want side hustles with lower startup barriers. They want homestead business models that feel manageable. They want farming systems capable of generating real livestock profit without demanding enormous land ownership. And this is exactly why automated quail systems continue attracting attention from all kinds of people: young entrepreneurs, backyard farmers, retirees, homesteaders, families searching for additional income, even people living in suburban environments with limited space. Because for many people, quail farming becomes a first-time farming actually feels accessible. Not fantasy, not social media entertainment, but genuinely achievable. And that emotional reaction is incredibly powerful. Once people realize profitable farming does not always require massive infrastructure, their entire perspective begins changing. Suddenly the idea of producing food feels possible. Building a small farm business feels possible. Generating homestead income feels possible. And that shift in mindset is exactly why so many modern micro-farming systems are exploding online right now. People are hungry for alternatives, especially alternatives that combine simplicity with efficiency. Because the truth is that traditional farming models are becoming increasingly difficult for beginners to enter. Land prices continue rising. Feed costs remain unpredictable. Equipment expenses keep increasing. And larger livestock systems often demand significant financial investment before meaningful profit appears. But Quail reduce several of those barriers dramatically. Their compact size lowers space requirements. Their feed efficiency lowers operating pressure. Their fast reproduction accelerates production cycles. And automation reduces labor intensity. Together, those advantages create something extremely valuable: scalability. That is the word many beginners overlook completely. Not all farm animals scale efficiently. Some become dramatically harder to manage as numbers increase. More cleaning, more noise, more disease pressure, more land usage, more labor. But automated quail systems can expand in a much more controlled and organized way when designed properly. That is one reason some experienced small-scale farming enthusiasts believe quail may become one of the most important small farm animals of the future, especially as urban farming and compact homestead systems continue growing worldwide. Because space efficiency is no longer just convenient, it is becoming necessary. And this is exactly where quail separate themselves from many traditional livestock systems. A person with limited land can still build meaningful production. That possibility changes everything, especially for younger generations interested in farming, but unable to afford large rural properties. Imagine someone converting a modest storage building into a carefully organized automated quail operation. Rows of stacked cages, automated watering systems, timed lighting, efficient ventilation, controlled breeding groups, egg production operating daily. Instead of needing huge acreage, the system relies on organization and efficiency. That is modern profitable livestock farming in its simplest form, not necessarily bigger, just smarter. And smarter systems usually survive longer. This is another reason quail farming aligns so well with the future of profitable farming. The industry is slowly moving toward optimization. Farmers are searching for ways to produce more while wasting less. Less feed waste, less labor waste, less space waste, less time waste. And because quail naturally fit compact automated systems so well, they become extremely attractive in this new environment, especially when market demand continues expanding. That demand side matters enormously, because no livestock system succeeds without buyers. Fortunately, interest in specialty poultry products continues growing steadily. Restaurants increasingly search for unique ingredients. Health-conscious consumers explore alternative protein sources. Homesteading communities continue expanding online, and local food systems are becoming more valuable as people grow more interested in where their food comes from. This creates opportunities for small farmers willing to build local customer relationships. Some focus on fresh quail eggs. Others supply restaurants. Some sell breeding stock. Others specialize in hatching eggs or meat production. And because the systems themselves remain relatively compact, farmers can adapt their business models based on local demand. That flexibility is powerful, especially compared to larger livestock operations that often become locked into rigid production systems. Small automated quail systems stay agile, and agility matters in business, especially during uncertain economic conditions, because adaptable systems survive change far better than rigid ones. This is exactly why many experienced homesteaders encourage beginners to focus on efficient livestock first before attempting massive farming projects. Learn systems, learn markets, learn production management, then expand carefully. And quail provide one of the fastest learning environments available in modern small-scale farming. Everything happens quickly. Growth happens quickly. Production happens quickly. Breeding cycles move quickly. Mistakes become visible quickly. Improvements produce results quickly. That rapid feedback helps beginners gain experience much faster than many traditional livestock systems allow. And that experience becomes extremely valuable over time, because successful farming is not built overnight. It is built through continuous improvement. Tiny optimizations repeated consistently, better breeding choices, improved feed management, cleaner systems, stronger automation, more efficient layouts, smarter scaling decisions. That process slowly transforms ordinary setups into highly profitable systems. But perhaps the most important thing quail farming teaches is this. Modern farming does not always reward the biggest operation anymore. Sometimes it rewards the smartest one, the most efficient one, the most adaptable one. And the farmers who recognize changing trends early often gain enormous advantages before everyone else catches up. Right now, automated quail farming still feels underestimated. Many people continue dismissing quail because of their size. But size can be deceiving, especially in farming. Tiny systems operating efficiently can produce remarkable results when managed correctly. And that may become one of the defining lessons of the next generation of profitable livestock farming. Because the future may belong less to giant, inefficient systems and more to compact, intelligent production models built around automation, efficiency, and flexibility. That is why so many people are paying attention now. Not because quail are trendy, but because they solve real problems. They reduce barriers. They lower space requirements. They simplify scaling. And they create realistic opportunities for people who once believed farming was completely out of reach. That is powerful, especially in a world where more people are searching for independence, self-sufficiency, and alternative income streams outside traditional jobs. And while automated quail farming may not be perfect, it represents something bigger than just birds in cages. It represents a shift in how modern farming is evolving. Smaller, smarter, more efficient, and potentially far more accessible than previous generations ever imagined. The people who understand that shift early may position themselves far ahead of the curve over the next decade. Because while everyone else keeps chasing outdated farming models that demand enormous land, enormous labor, and enormous risk, a new generation of farmers is quietly building compact systems capable of producing serious results from surprisingly small spaces. And this is only the beginning. There are still countless profitable livestock systems, homestead business ideas, and modern farming strategies most people have never even heard about yet. That is exactly what this channel is here to explore. If you want to learn about profitable farming, small farm income strategies, modern homesteading for profit, farm animals for profit, micro farming systems, backyard farming ideas, livestock businesses, farm ROI strategies, and the smartest ways to build a profitable small farm in today's world, then you are in the right place. Because at Herd and Harvest, we are not just talking about farming. We are exploring the future of farming, the systems changing everything, the opportunities most people overlook, and the smartest ways ordinary people can start building real homestead income step by step. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to Herd and Harvest right now. And more importantly, stay ahead of the curve, because the next generation of profitable farming is already beginning. And the people who move early are often the ones who benefit the most.